Hello and welcome to this workshop that features Tattered Lace Card Shapes Volume 1. And for this workshop, what I'll be doing is taking you through creating a little bit of a background within Minecraft Studio. We're going to be printing it out at a smaller size. Then we're going to be taking it over to the ScanNCut and cutting our card shape from this USB. What I'm doing is then being able to shrink down that card shape to match in with our artwork as well. So it's a little bit of a mix and match demonstration, this one. First off, we're going to go over to Minecraft Studio. We've popped our USB into our machine. And just as a word, I've put all of my current files that I'm working with on the one USB to make it super easy for me. So what we're working with is Card Shapes Volume 1. And within that, we've got both Minecraft Studio and, of course, the SVG files too in this demonstration. For Minecraft Studio, we'll go ahead and check that. We're going to go into our artwork and into this particular folder as well. We then got backgrounds, the charisma, digi stamps and sentiments, scene building elements, and the templates as well. Just for this demonstration, we're going to be working with both the backgrounds and some of the scene building elements too. So let's double click on our backgrounds and choose one that we want to create with as well. So I thought this was quite fun. This lovely, beautiful skyline with the kind of fields in front, nice summer's day, maybe. Let's go with that one. Now again, this point is for personal preference really. I mean, I personally like working on a plain white background. So I'm going to check the ruler and the grid off. That gives me a little bit more scope just to see where I'm going rather than having to line things up. You'll notice here I haven't quite got the A4 sheet exactly over the A4 background there. Just as a note, I tend to use the little boxes around and just stretch the side, stretch the top to make it a little bit bigger so it sits completely over my blank space there. Not by too much, just enough to cover that white space without me having to fiddle for ages to get it in the right placement. But I didn't want just a plain background here. I wanted to create kind of like a summer meadow kind of feel to this particular card. So if we go back into the Minecraft Studio files for Card Shapes Volume 1, and into the scene building elements, you'll see you've got all these beautiful florals that we can use to create really stunning background designs for our cards. Of course, it then goes into all the elements you'll be familiar with from the SVG files too. So let's go ahead and choose some of these florals. Now I'm kind of sticking with this kind of pink and blue theme for this particular design. So I'm going to drag and drop the elements onto my paper here and then just scroll them down just so they're hanging off both sides of the cardstock design too. One thing that you might like to do, my brain just happens to work this way because this is the way the cutting file cuts out. If you prefer building something where it is around the right way for your eye to view, what we can always do is go into print at the top here and we can choose portrait and landscape orientations. So we can change this from portrait to landscape. What we then need to do, just scroll away whatever we've been working with, find the background like so, scroll it down so you can view this little circle up here and rotate it through 90 degrees like so. You'll see the little degree sign at the side of your cursor. Then we can just drag and drop like so. So again, it just depends on which way you prefer working. Again, it is whatever you feel most comfortable with, but each element that we then drag and drop on, just rotate through and then position over the edge. Again, if you're someone who likes things precise and to exactly see where you're going, each time you place an element on, you can click this crop tool up here, click the element you've just dragged on, and then crop it down in a way that then comes onto the page like so. Okay. For me, again, I prefer leaving it as is, and we can just cancel that off. To crop it exactly, you'd have to have it lined up, again, 90 degrees, crop, click, and then you can line that up with the edge of the paper like so, and click OK. So if you prefer working in something that's neat and precise, that's the way you would do it. However, what we can also do is have the flowers in different orientations as well, coming up the side of the page. And then as you've seen, you can't necessarily then crop that down to the side of the paper as well. If you want them overlaying one another to give that really full effect, we can right click, order, send that element to the back, and then order again, just bring it forwards from the background paper as well. And it's just beginning to build this whole kind of wonderful full edge to your design. As I mentioned, we're working with the pinks and the blues. This could be done with any one of the colour palettes here, but do come in and choose different styles of florals, the different elements that we've got. Scroll the sizes in as well. Remember, not each and every single one of the floral elements is going to be that same size. You know, they're all going to be different. Once again, if we click on to select, right click and order, we can send to the back and then bring that forward just one step so it then sits behind the last piece that we've added in. And from there, it's just a case of building along that element like so. You know, perhaps you want them up the other way, perhaps you want them facing different directions, as we've mentioned, change that size up as well. Just give that lovely full effect to the page here. Again, just choose the different colorways, overlapping each one slightly. Again, changing the orientation so each one is unique and different to the last. And it's just a lovely way of building up a different feel to your background designs. Gives you much more control over the elements as well. And each time choose where you want it to sit, whether you want it right in the background or whether you want it coming forwards atop the last flowers that you've put down, like so. We can add in one more floral up to the corner there. Again, just changing the orientation so things feel different, changing the size down so it's in keeping with the rest as well. What I like to do at this stage is then select something like this one here. We can copy and paste that element. I'm going to drag that just through to the center of my screen. And here we can take elements of these individual flowers as well. So we click the scissor tool. You'll see that kind of grayed out box appears over the element. We want to scroll in so we can see it in lots and lots of detail. And maybe we just want these little buds to add into our design. We can go around anywhere where it's not sort of overlapping another piece of artwork. We can be quite rough with our cutting. And even down to these little elements here, we can just come across and then just bring up the side of the stem there to create a little element like so. Once we've joined, we can scroll down on the page itself, choose to keep the inner, like so. Let me just scroll out a ways as well so we can see the rest of the design. And that gives us another little element as a tuck-in that we can scroll down and then turn through and again send to the back just to hide any of the edges that we've cut away as well. Order, send to back, and then bring forward one layer, like so. And we can put that in, you know, in different areas and repeat that pattern throughout. What I like to do at this stage is scroll in and just check along this baseline here that there's no sort of green of that field showing. If there is, just add in a few more flowers, but that's actually looking like it's nice and full. Got a little bit of green here, so we can always choose an element, right click, copy, right click, paste, and bring in another set of flowers over the top just to break any elements up like so. You really want this feeling full and luscious and wonderful, like so. All the way across we can check, make sure there's no green. Once we're happy with how it looks, we can go ahead and print that out. Once you've printed it off, you'll end up with something like this. Now, again, it's nuances in design. It might be that you want a really bright, bold design, leave it as is and print it on something like the premium pure print paper from Highlight Crafts. However, if you want it as a background element to your card design, do consider utilizing the transparency tool on my Craft Studio. I'll show you just where we can find that as well. Once we've got all of our elements laid out, what we can do is choose to select all. You see each one of these elements, I mean, there's loads and loads and loads on the page. Each one has these little boxes around it. Let's go ahead and group those together. So now the file recognizes this as one design. If you do want this as an insert or you want a softer feel to your design, we click on Effects and we can take that opacity down. So it gives it a much, much softer finish, something around the 75%. It's still nice and coloured, but it isn't going to take over or distract from the SVG files that we put over the top as well. So again, once you've printed, you'll end up with something like this. Now, just a word of caution when it comes to printing, all printers are different. So it might be that you want to fill the entire page. You want to try turning borderless printing off. Again, there's different words for different printer programs, but have a play around and see what suits you. Some printers quite a lot of printers will cut off and create a bordered edge. And I purposefully printed this with that white edge all the way round. So when it comes to cutting this out with our ScanNCut, I can show you how we can adapt the SVG file to fit in to the artwork. So you don't have that added pressure of trying to work out how we can fill this whole page with color. We can change the SVG files to fit in with whatever we've printed. We can go ahead, pop the SVG USB into our ScanNCut and go ahead and cut this out. Once USB is in the ScanNCut, we're going to go into Retrieve Data, and we're going to click on the USB symbol here. We're going to go into Card Shapes Vol.1. As I've said, this is a USB I've put loads of content on, so you would have just the Vol.1 files. This time around, we're working with our SVG files here. We are going to go ahead into Setting the Scene, and this is going to allow us to cut out a really lovely card shape that can be found within the detailed cuts. Setting the Scene number 1 gives us this whole almost full A4 size, almost just under, of a cutting design, which will give us a little fold back designed card. We're going to hit OK, and this gives us a full file. No bits are sort of ungrouped or anything like that. It will cut in its entirety. As you can see, it's going to fill the majority of that page. We're going to go ahead and layer up our card. We're going to stick our paper nice and securely to our mat here. Just looking for my roller to make sure it's nice and secure. Just make sure when we're putting it in place, it doesn't shift about. We want that edge right up against where the numbers are, just to make sure it's nice and straight. And that makes everything nice and parallel to the rest of the design. I'm going to go ahead and roller that down into place. And we're then going to offer our mat up to our machine and press the mat feed button like so. This is where something like the scan function on your ScanNCut comes in really, really handy, because we can create an image on our screen of exactly what's on our mat and then adjust our SVG file accordingly as well. So we're going to go ahead and hit that little scan button like so and press start. The machine will take the mat in. It will then produce a high quality colour image on the screen of exactly what's on the mat, which will allow us that adjustment of the SVG. And again, this is just if you do get those borders, those white strips around your artwork when you're printing from things like Minecraft Studio. As we've mentioned, it does depend on your print program there. Now, for me, I'd like this card with this kind of little edge, this edge that goes backwards round the other way. Do I or don't I? Making a decision here? I couldn't. Again, position how you want. You've got these score lines already in place, so this bit will go back, this bit will come forward, and that creates the centre of your card. As you can see, it's going to be tight, cutting this out of the artwork that we've got going on. If you want to inspect it even further, we can go into Edit and magnify up to 400 times. You can see here, just along that top edge, you're going to get a little bit of white. If we scroll down, just to check the rest of the card, there's a little bit of white creeping in on that top edge as well. Again, I like to do this little check, and of course that little bit of white, so it's just a little bit smaller than what my SVG file is. So we're going to click OK, and we're going to go into Object Edit. I'm going to use this little resize button, the top button there, and I like to choose either the height or the width. I tend to go with the width because it's the shortest length, and just dial that down a little bit until I see a tiny bit of the pattern either side of the red line. And that just allows me a little bit more wiggle room when it comes to cutting out these elements here. So just squidging that down, I can see a little bit of pattern all the way round. Once I'm happy, I'm going to go ahead and click OK. I'm not going to just go ahead and cut. I am going to go in again with the magnifier and just double check that that is nice and lined up. You see, you've got that little bit of a border. Essentially, we created our own bleed, if you like, all the way round. And let's just scroll down to the bottom and check that bottom edge as well. I'm just pressing and holding on the arrows on the screen. Again, we've got that clearance on the bottom edge there as well. We can click OK and OK and OK. Please select to cut and start. We are working on the ScanNCut SDX, so of course SDX 1200, so it does have that auto blade function as well, which means it's going to be able to measure the depth of the mat and measure the depth of whatever we're working on and adjust itself accordingly. It will put all the score lines and things like that into this particular design as well. It's all been added to that SVG file, and it will go ahead and cut that file out for you. Okay, so our machine has finished cutting. We're going to go ahead and hit the unload button and then peel away our card shape design. So we've got that little bit of surround with the bleed, and it's got its score lines in place too. So what we want to do is just go ahead and bend those score lines through. So just really neatening them up, really, and you can already see the other ones want to pull back. To create our little fold design. Whenever you've got things like a score line, you want to go ahead and burnish them all down. Just use something like a little bone folder, just make everything nice and neat and crisp. But that gives us our background card design that then opens up in that kind of fun pull-out fashion like so. From here, of course, we have the wonderful elements on this USB that we can go ahead and decorate through the card as well. I'm going to go ahead and create a little composition on just the one side to make it lovely and fun. But the nice thing about this is because we've created that transparency on the background, look how the elements that we've cut in full color really then go ahead and pop from the background as well. So things like the little chalkboard, of course, we could add text to. You could add the text in Minecraft Studio if you wanted to add in a little bit of detailing as well. I'm going to create just a little composition off to one side, something like these wonderful little balloons, giving this kind of idea that it's a nice little summer party going on. Whenever we're sticking to something that has this wonderful open effect, you want to be mindful of where you're placing. So think about your anchor points. Here we've added the glue along the bottom and the side of the chalkboard, but that can then become a little bit of an anchor point for the balloons, and of course we can then add those and stick those to the surround of the card as well. So I'm going in with my bookbinding glue from Pinflair, just adding the glue into areas that become our anchor points like so, and each time just checking the placement so it's not going to be bent, it's not coming away from the overall design too. We can then choose to add in other elements, maybe something like the wheelbarrow, for example, would be a lot of fun. Going in with the Pinflair, just adding in detail to that, a little bit of glue, and again, each time overlapping those elements, so it makes it feel like it's coming forward from the card too. We have things like these wonderful trees that we could put in to ground even further. It might be that we want to have those in front of the wheelbarrow. Maybe we want the wheelbarrow sort of laden with lots of lovely florals as well. I think that looks a lot of fun. Let's go ahead and add some of these in, spilling out of the edge of the wheelbarrow too. But again, because we've got that colour contrast between the flowers that we've used in the background and also the flowers that we're then positioning onto the wheelbarrow, it just makes these little elements pop. Lift, tuck, shape, whatever it is you want to do at this stage, tell your story with the design. Just have a little bit of fun with this as well. Maybe we're going to have a little bit of a plant pot in the foreground. Maybe we want some flowers coming out of those, you know, just create a little composition too. Maybe you want to decorate the chalkboard with a little bit of ivy. We can snip into this, you know, it's just like if you're doing die cutting and using die elements as well. You don't have to use these in their entirety just as is. You can choose to come in, snip a few little elements away and create a different look to the SVG files that we've cut out using that charisma artwork as well. So a few little ivy leaves escaping over the top. Let's hide that little end of the ivy leaves with a few little elements like so that we can cut away, just changing up the look, changing up the style. Maybe we want the ivy coming down the edge as well. Let's do that because I think that's going to look fun. Just using our scissors to round off elements like so. And again, because I'm working on something that's a little bit more detailed, a little bit smaller, I'm going in with my tweezers and just gluing them. Talking about, you know, things being smaller and things like that, you know, with the SVG files, of course, we can choose to print them at different sizes, and of course size those up as well. So whatever you want to do, you can do that too. So lots and lots of options here. I wanted a little cluster of ivy leaves to the corner just to create something a little bit different here, and then mirroring those ivy leaves just around the bottom of the design as well to finish our little card. Again, options, you can continue, you can add more, you can add detailing, whatever it is you want. We can do all of that as well. And at this stage, we're going to go ahead and add in a few of those little ivy leaves just as decoration, just to break up that colour of the wood that we have on the chalkboard and of course on the wheelbarrow there as well. Let's just lift that wheelbarrow slightly, tuck those leaves in behind, and that creates that little mirrored effect between the two sides like so. A few last little ivy leaves just to create a little triangle. Let's go a point here and a point here. Let's have them coming cascading, if you like, down the back of the wheelbarrow too. Just shaping wherever I've cut away to make it nice and neat. Use my tweezers to hold as I go in with a little bit more bookbinding glue, lifting and tucking just like so to finish that little composition. I've got a few bits left over for another card project or to decorate the other side of the card design, but that then is open for more compositions, more additions, more detailing, whatever it is you want from this design. That just gives you a little bit of an overview how we can resize the SVG files if we need to, using the downloads and the backgrounds we've created on Minecraft Studio 2. Hope you enjoyed this demonstration. We'll be back with more, and I look forward to seeing what you create with this USB too.
If you would like to see more from Highlight Crafts, make sure you click the like button. Subscribe by clicking the subscribe button below, and click the bell icon to receive notifications on all our future content. You can also click here to see our latest video, or click here to see more videos like this one.